So let's open the meeting. Introductions. It's what time is it? 1:03. Introductions of board members in their respective positions. Gary, will you do a quick introduction of yourself and what you represent?
Yeah, Kerry Cook, Wayne County. Thank you.
Shane.
Shane Whitwer, I'm not sure. I think I'm representing UTIA and the tourism industry.
Yeah. So okay. And then Sheriff Glover.
Yeah, Sheriff Tracy Glover. I'm the Kane County Sheriff and the president of the Utah Sheriff's Association.
And I'm Andy Smith. I'm representing the rural EMS directors, department staff. You guys want quick introductions?
All right, Casper with Division of Parks and Compliance Manager. India Nielsen with the Division of Outdoor Recreation, Deputy Director of Operations.
Jason Curry, Division Director. Thank you for being here.
Katie Miner, Utah Association of Counties.
And Patrick Morrison, Recreation Program Director in the division.
Okay. Who else do we have online that hasn't been introduced?
Tsai Peng Guan here for the State Auditor's Office, and somebody here might know me from my time at the Tax Commission.
Okay. Awesome.
And then I'm here, Jorge Vasquez with the Division of Outdoor Recreation. I am just part of staff here.
And my name's Nicole Hanna. I'm counsel for the Division of Recreation.
Awesome. I think, is that everybody? Yeah. Okay. Looks like we're all acquainted. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? If so, I'll take a motion.
Andy, I had a chance to look at them. I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
All right. Sheriff
Second.
Glover's made a motion. And was that Carrie that seconded?
Shane.
Okay. Shane. Got it. Shane seconded. Any discussion? Everything looked good on my end when I reviewed it. I didn't see anything that wasn't correct. So.
Seemed good to
Okay.
me too.
Okay, great. Let's just all in favor of passing the minutes. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Maybe ask if there are any opposed, just to be clear.
Yeah. Thanks. Any opposed? It's actually the best way to do it with online meetings. So. Okay, no opposed. Let's move on. I don't believe DEM is going to be making it. Is that right, Jorge?
Yeah, that's right. DM won't be here today.
Angela thinks she's busy with fires and stuff, whatever. Okay, let's review the draft application. Hey, Patrick.
Okay, I can share my screen here. Give
And
me a
for those of you in the room, we do within these packets, there are some applications if you want to follow along.
Okay, I'm just pulling it up here, and then let me know if you can see that all right.
Hasn't shown up yet. There it goes. There you go.
Okay, everybody can see it in person and online perfectly fine. Okay, cool. Just double checking. Okay, so we just we made a pretty, I guess, to kind of just start out with, in the sense of hearing everybody's thoughts and advice from like our initial application. I'm hoping you all had gotten an opportunity to kind of take an initial look before this meeting, but really the big things were we took out the visitor related sections for both emergency and safety. Really the big thing is that we're trying to reduce, I guess, overall confusion for folks and make it easier for them to understand really what we're trying to help them with the overall application and just make it as simple as possible. So for the most part, this part essentially stayed the same with the basic project and contact information. That essentially stayed the same. The thing that we pretty much removed on this part was the longitude and latitude of the projects and just overall cost, because it's going to be different and there may be various locations, and so it may be hard to capture that all in one specific location. And then as I'm going through this, please feel free to stop me at any point. And if you have any sort of questions, or if anybody has anything else to add, please, again, stop me. Here with the county information and eligibility data, from our previous meeting, we had talked about trying to make it easier in terms of making it more pre-filled, as well as having the KEMC Gardner County Tourism dashboard on here as well.
I'm downstairs trying to do a meeting.
But yeah, so again, just overall pre-filled data here. So if folks click on this link, it's going to be taking them into an overall folder that's going to have all the counties, just overall the information there. And they're going to be able to take a look at it. It's going to be essentially like on a Google Doc, and we'll have questions of the overall county population, county classification, and they'll be essentially just marking whether that information is accurate or not. So again, like I said, county population, their county classification, whether if the imposition of like the TRT rate is accurate, whether the county has been generating less than 10 million in revenue, if that's accurate, and if any of that information isn't accurate, they're able to click no. And this final question here, they'll essentially identify those items to, give more clarity on whether things is accurate or not, and just overall, and whether we should be considering any other information that we're potentially missing. And then, as I mentioned, we have the KEMC Gardner tourism dashboard as well. The link is up top here for them to click on that, and they'll be able to take a look and filter through the counties, just to take a look at that data. And again, it'll be essentially the same thing here. They'll have an opportunity to say, yes, this represents our county, or no, this doesn't represent the county. And then if not, they have an opportunity to kind of explain more and provide other data that they wish to provide. And then here on this part, we have whether the county's current with the Utah State Auditor's Office. I'm glad we have somebody from the Auditor's Office here with us today in case we need any help or any questions to add on to that. Seth wasn't able to make it to today's meeting, but and then we have these other questions. Again, this is more just in addition to being able to add more language to whether if information up top is inaccurate, or if they wish to just add more information. So again, this is more providing whether an estimated amount of outdoor recreation and tourism, potentially looking at just a rough estimate of visitor numbers, as well as dollar estimates that's potentially coming into the county. We have the county's ability to manage SAR and EMS, and just overall everything that's being requested in the application for us to be able to gauge that. Why TRT funding may be insufficient for the visitor related impacts that are affecting the counties. How grant funding could reduce the overall pressure on the counties, just giving them an opportunity to explain that, as well as identifying whether funding is going to be shared with any special service district, and if so, they have to identify who, the amount, and overall their role as a service district. And then we added the letters of acknowledgement. That was a question that we had on our last meeting, was what kind of letters we were wanting to add. We decided, again, more go along the lines of a letters of acknowledgement that the Tourism Tax Advisory Board is aware that the county is applying, and so they'll have to get that letter and submit that in here. And then just a W-9 here as well, just that tax form. Any questions on this? This was a really big one in terms of revamping it and changing it from what it looked like previously.
I think it's a lot better. So good job to you guys for trying to make it as easy as possible. Go ahead.
A couple questions here. So first, So the TRCC report, technically, they are not due until October 1st. So what is the deadline for this grant application?
That's a great question. So the grant application is going to be due August 31st. Now I know that it's not due until October, or you said October, correct?
Yes, October 1st.
They're technically not necessarily needing to, from my understanding and reading it, and please correct me anybody if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, they need to be current with the state auditor's office by 2028 or 27. So for the following year, that grant application would be really taking a look at whether they're current with the state auditor's office.
And Jorge, that's my understanding of the statute. It's also my understanding of the statute that an entity is current with the state auditor's office, even if they submit prior to October 1, because it is looking at prior years. So that was my understanding of what the plan was.
Yeah.
We are going to send out a reminder later this month to remind people to fill out the TRCCA report. We will also add that there is application for this grant funding available, and if they would like to apply for it, please work on their TRCCA report. And pardon me, I just got to the state auditor's office 3 weeks ago, and my boss is out of the office. So I was reading the statute. It doesn't look like the state auditor's office has any part in reviewing the eligibility of this application. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So this is more so just along the lines of making sure that the counties are reporting the information that was previously missing. And so that's why we added an in progress option here underneath that question. So for the following year, I guess we'll be able to discuss a little bit more about what that potentially looks like for the following year. But yeah.
And maybe just a touch more context on that. It says like we may request assistance from the state auditor to determine eligibility of the counties, but not eligibility of like the applications. And so they have until January 1, 2028 to be current. So up until that point, they don't need to necessarily be current in the same way that they will be after that date. So, I hopefully you can help us just keep informed if they are up to date on their filings.
Okay. I guess, and this could be an answer we could have later, but I have an email from Scott Hadley from local government team at the state auditor's office saying my report's due June 30th. So I worked my tail off to get that done for our county auditor. So I'm a little confused by the date. I always thought it was June 30th. Is that not? And again, that not necessarily has to do with this grant. I just kind of need that answered.
Yeah. So it depends on what kind of report you're working on. The TRCCA report is not due until October 1st, but there are several other important reports that they are due June 30th. And if they're not submitted on time, there's a small grace period, but your entity's fund might be withheld.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
I bet what's happening in your specific case is that the old TRT report was due June 30th. The new TRCCA reporting is changed to be October 1st.
And 2025 was the last year of the old report.
There's like an interim situation too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
We
April
can talk
27th.
more later.
So yeah, no stress. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, it doesn't have to do with it. But
Good question.
spent a lot of time this last month when I had more. Okay. Sorry, Jorge. Continue.
No, you're perfect. I mean, this is what we're needing. So just the dialogue and the questions are all welcome. So thank you. Is there any other questions that we have before I move on to the next section?
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Shane. Sorry.
I just wonder if, and maybe we'll get into this in the next section. So no, let's keep going and I'll bring mine up in a second.
Okay.
I just wanted to confirm again what we talked about last time. Make sure that's still the case. The case is that the tourism board is acknowledging that they have received something from the county stating, here's what we're applying for. It's not that they necessarily agree with the priorities or that they're on board with it as much as it is the county needs to set their what they believe their priorities are, because this is reimbursement, it's not spending the actual money, right? Does that make sense? Is that kind of why we
Yeah.
went that direction?
Yes, that's why instead of it being, I guess, a letter of support, it's a letter of acknowledgement.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, of course. Okay, I'll keep on going. So here in this next section is the search and rescue portion to the application. If you remember before, it used to be visitor related emergency costs. And again, we split that into 3 different sections just to represent what we were really going for there, and just to, search and rescue and EMS are completely different from each other, and it was really hard to try and capture it initially within the one section. And so we again split that. And we did this with every single section. So I added language in here that kind of describes, because I wish Salesforce made it easier in the sense to do like conditional questions. If you're applying for search and rescue, you'd get this set of questions. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that in Salesforce. And so I added this language just to make sure and try help people only complete the section if it applies to the request that they're submitting, and if not, they can hit NA or 0 where applicable to whatever they may not be applying for. But again, this is essentially something that only like, for instance, if Sheriff Glover's would be filling this out, or whoever he has on there that's going to be filling it out, they would only be filling out this section. So this would be dedicated to the search and rescue folks. So again, considering the fact that it's reimbursement based, and we're expecting to get more funding, or not necessarily more funding, but more requests probably from this end, we thought that'd be important to have more information on here. So again, so the SAR contact name, email, the phone number, number of visitor-related incidences of SAR incidences in the last year, total reimbursement amount requested for unpaid SAR services within the counties, and then a quick summarization of the unpaid SAR incidences included in the request, and essentially explaining how these incidences are connected to increased outdoor recreation, tourism, and any other convention activity. So again, these 2 questions are tied together. SAR present and ongoing amount requested, and then the summarizing the proposed present or ongoing SAR costs and explaining how those will help the county respond to visitor-related SAR incidences caused by increased outdoor recreation. So again, those are tied as well, giving their overall narrative of why SAR funding is potentially insufficient within their county, and explaining how the requested funds will support SAR services related to increased outdoor recreation, tourism, and convention activity. And then whether any of the SAR costs within the application have already been paid, reimbursed, or submitted, potentially submitted through the Utah Search and Rescue Advisory Board or any other non-county funding source. So this is just more just to try and make sure that these aren't already costs that have been either paid or reimbursed to the county. So just trying to make sure that they understand that. And then essentially providing a ledger for the SAR cost included within the reimbursement request. And then any sort of documentation supporting the costs that are in the ledger included in the request. And that's essentially it for this section here. Any questions from folks?
Yeah, so this is going to carry through all of them. And it's even going to tie in the first section that you just covered too. Do we need to provide a definition of a visitor? I mean,
Yes.
that can be pretty broad. Does this include state visitors? I mean, outside of county, what is the definition?
So that's a really good question, Shane. I mean, I had that written down here as to kind of bring that as a talking point, because that's going to be really important for how we're defining a visitor. I know previously we kind of talked about whether we're wanting to do like a 50-mile radius or from folks that are just simply outside of the county. I think that's kind of, we're really leaning on the board here to kind of help us, really make that decision of what a visitor really is in this case. I think it's also kind of important to take in mind I idea of like where the funding's coming from and whether things would be kind of fair if it was within the if a visitor was within the same county. But those are just some points, talking points here. So I'd leave it up. I'd like to open it up for y'all to kind of discuss that for a minute.
Go ahead, Sheriff.
Yeah, I've thought about this a little bit as well. I think and maybe Katie can weigh in on this. I think part of the idea behind this whole program was to accurately capture the costs of counties like, you know, Kane County or Garfield or Wayne County and others. There's many, Graham County, that have visitors from outside the area, not necessarily outside the state, but you know, visitors from the Wasatch Front, let's say, for example, that might come to Red Rock Country and get lost or need help. So I don't think it can be out of state visitors only. The you know, kind of a bubble, creating a bubble of mileage might work, because if you had, like in my case, I'm a border community, Grand County's a border community, so you could have visitors here that are from only a couple miles away in Arizona that we rescue. The reality is we've been really tracking these numbers just lately in the last year or so to see where our rescuees are from. And something like all but one of them in the last year has been from a significant distance away from our county. So I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue in some of these rural areas that we're trying to fund. But I do think a clear set of guardrails and parameters to define a visitor would be necessary. And I think it should, at a minimum, it should be outside of the county. If they live in the county, I don't think they should apply as a visitor. If we want to actually tack on a mileage or a distance beyond that, I guess we could.
Selena, go ahead.
Hey, we have a definition that we work with as the industry, the tourism industry, in regards to traveler types that comes from the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute. I know I've sent this to you previously, Jorge. I'm happy to drop it in the chat versus try and read it out loud for clarity's sake for everybody. But that would be my recommendation, is to follow a definition that's already been set by, you know, a well-respected state level organization that's guiding a lot of the research and tools that we're using as an industry. So happy to drop that definition in.
Okay, Cole?
The attorney agrees with the idea of using something that's already well established in the industry, as opposed to coming up with something that would be by definition a little bit more arbitrary. Because even though we have a really high bar in the state, it's still, we still like to steer as far away from that kind of arbitrary and capricious as possible. So just wanted to put in my 2 cents there.
And I'll just note that Sheriff Glover's desire to have that definition represent county versus out of county is in alignment with the Kempsey Gardner definition. So you're good with that, Sheriff.
Yeah, and I mean, the only guidance that we're getting from the bill that was passed is essentially they just have to be there for a purpose, one of these specific purposes. And you know, if you live in the county and you happen to go roll your 4-wheeler, you're not necessarily in the county for that purpose. You might be recreating in your own county, but you're not necessarily in the county for the purpose of recreation. You live there. And so I think that definition of just out of the county makes the most sense. And if that's in alignment with, you know, things that are already in policy, that's kind of how we should look at it. Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, I like the out of county. I like the idea of using the definition, but it does contradict maybe in some ways when some of the questions refer to, I'm looking for it right now, but basically, you know, tourism, well, it talks about outdoor recreation uses, which really may not apply the same way as that definition of a visitor. So do we need to change some of the questions that refer to tourism, convention activity, and outdoor recreation to tourism or to visitor related outdoor recreation? You'll see questions in almost each one that have you know, incidents based, you know, connected to increased outdoor recreation. Outdoor recreation to me sounds like it could be anything from anyone.
That's sorry, go ahead.
I did. Selena, do you remember? I kind of think that the thought was that outdoor recreation was meant to include county residents or outside of county residents. And it was the search and rescue where we were trying to delineate between what is, theoretically a normal county function because some of your people get lost in the mountains, and an outsized impact, which is visitors from out of your area coming to your area and needing help. Do you remember?
Yeah. I'm in alignment with what Shane's recommending, that if you can draw it to visitor related outdoor recreation, again, that's what we're all trying to gather in between, Sheriff Glover and otherwise, that we're looking from that in county to out of county. So that 50-mile definition that's included in what I posted is somewhat liked and somewhat disliked when it comes to within or without a county, but is more of a general operating distance. But I also fully recognize that there are some counties where 50 miles still keeps you within a county.
Yeah, we have a few communities where 50 miles is well within our county, in the middle, because we're on the edge of San Juan. So
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly where I'm thinking, is down in that area as well. But yeah, so I agree with Shane's assessment, though. If you want to, I believe the intention is really to drive it towards visitor related outdoor recreation versus resident outdoor recreation.
Go ahead, Sheriff.
I was just going to throw the example out that, like in my county, for example, every visitor from Kanab that visits Lake Powell would then qualify under this grant program if it's the 50-mile rule, which maybe that's what we want. I had kind of envisioned more of an out-of-county definition, but if we want to stick with something, I guess 50 miles works. The truth is the numbers wouldn't be that great anyway in rural counties where local people are not the people we're searching for most of the time. EMS might be slightly different, but 99% of these cases are going to be out of county, out of state, out of country visitors that we're rescuing.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with all of that. Shane, can you, because the way I read this, it does say number of visitor related SAR incidents. Is there an area where it doesn't specify visitor related that I'm missing?
Yeah, I mean, just in some of the questions, and there's not numbers next to them, but some of the questions will say, there's one on page 7, I guess, is on the one I printed out that says summarize unpaid EMS incidents. So this is going into the next section, but it's the same. Included in the request, and explain how the incidents were connected to increased outdoor recreation, tourism, and convention activity. And that's where I would throw it, is I would just include the visitor related.
Yeah.
Okay. Even like the next two questions, solar reimbursement amount. I think anytime we mention, we just always are plugging in
Visitor related.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think does anybody on the committee have any different feelings? I think that's completely fair and should be something we do moving forward. Is that an issue for anyone else? Anything else to say about that? Okay.
And then just for admin sake, this is and I'm pointing to the definition that Selena provided. This is what we'll be using. So within a county, over 50 miles. Okay.
Yeah. And I think the idea there is it's more inclusive to the Sheriff Glover situations of the world. This grant doesn't apply to the Wasatch Front, but obviously Salt Lake County, considering Utah County residents, is just a different set of math than you're doing in Southern Utah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have an issue with it. Again, I don't think the numbers are great enough to worry. We'll probably just use numbers based on billing or address, zip code to determine that, which is how we've done it in the past. So, I may lose one call or something because it was a visitor that's more than 50 miles, but from our county, which our whole county has the same zip code. That's kind of important too to know. But that's not a big deal. It's going to be very small numbers. So I think it's totally fine.
Also, if I can go back a little bit, on page 6 or page 4, there's a question that asks to provide estimated tourism convention activity with including visitor numbers and dollar estimates. That seems really hard to do. If I was filling this out, that would be, I would be perplexed by that. And it seems like that is still covered in the information coming from Kempsey Gardner. Maybe I'm wrong, but that either be more specific or ask for something different, or just get rid of that question.
Well, and Shane, that's really helpful. I think, Jorge and I have been looking at this, with like 15 applications. I think we are very happy to have a really like heavy administration on this. So stuff like this is stuff that we could kind of pull.
Yeah.
We're not, when we're looking at 100 applications for other programs, that's one thing, but this is 15. And so I think, we're very on board with a heavy administrative lift. And so potentially we could remove that question. And then
Well,
we have the question as just a measurable. So when we are getting to the priorities of funding, that's going to be one of them.
So Shane, is your concern that it would be very hard to quantify? It just might be hard to come up with.
I think it is hard to quantify, especially, the dollars you could tie to, TRT, but the visitors themselves would be really difficult unless you're referring to national parks, state parks, or specific, venues and attractions. But I think it really is hard to quantify total visitation.
And then maybe, just as a thing about the administration, because that's, in the bill, that's one of the things that we're using as a measurable, like, Selena or Shane, is that something that we'd be able to work together with to try to get some estimates of what those might look like? Just over the previous 5 years?
Yes, I've got, again, good old Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute. They do county dashboards that allow the breakdown per county as best as possible to look at things like visitor spending in the county, what the county's share of total visitor spending is, and the tax revenue generated. As far as like the number of visitors, that's going to be that's not as well published on a per county basis. And especially as we're dealing with some of these rural, really small counties, they're not necessarily probably investing in the tourism tools that are tracking visitation numbers. So let me dive into that a little bit more to see what other avenues we might have to provide as a resource to counties to be able to access that information.
Well, and that's why if you go to the questions before that, it does refer to those county dashboards and whether they are represented by that. They're already kind of responding to that question in the previous questions.
Okay, well, I'm comfortable removing that and then just kind of adding it to that first section where we're trying to do the pre-population.
Just as somebody put it up there. That's exactly what I'm looking at right now. Just as a question on good governance, are we comfortable? I assume we're all comfortable utilizing an outside agency's report as factual. Kempsey Gardner, of course, I have no problems with it. I just want to make sure legally there's no weird hoops if we use their data to determine information.
You think it's the most creditable you're going to get?
Yeah, that's not. Yeah.
And so the state relies on this.
Okay.
Natalie Gochner makes her presentation every year. She's considered the state economist. So yeah.
Okay. No, I'm totally good with it. I just want to make sure there weren't any weird legal implications there.
Jorge, back to the location that references the Kempsey Gardner and verifying it. Do you mind popping back over there?
Yes, I can pop down that way. Okay.
The other one that we may just want to link to or reference to would be the Utah Office of Tourism's public research dashboard, which is also pulling in more recent data from a variety of sources like the State Tax Commission and otherwise. And so I can send that over to you all as well, but that would be another I don't know if that's the right location for it, but that's another resource that we would want to ensure is included in that regard.
Okay, so kind of structuring it in the same way, does it like match? Do they agree whether the information appears accurate and give them an opportunity to explain why or why not?
I don't know if that's interesting because I don't know if it's like the county has the ability to say, no, we don't agree with the tax commission's revenue numbers or if that occurs. Maybe Our county friends can tell me otherwise, but I just want it available as a reference resource when guiding some of the questions around visitation numbers, revenue generated, and otherwise.
Is the question to underscore to the county as they're filling it out what these numbers are, so that they have reference and they're knowing, rather than fact checking, like, or even protesting, like say I get property tax stuff and it's saying, we think the value of your house is now higher, you pay more taxes. That's a little different. That's where I get, oh, you have this opportunity to protest. We don't really want that, but I think what could be helpful is for each county to understand, gosh, you had this many visitors this fiscal year, or however you're gauging that. So no wonder the costs are,
Can I make a suggestion maybe?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was just thinking maybe we could just use that that general definition that we all kind of agreed on before, as you guys for the outward facing way in which you collate information, but then in rule or just by policy, you guys could leave it open so that you could also consider other sources of information, none of which independently is going to be determinative. And if you put language like that in there, then I think that you could both internally rely on that other information and allow, like, if there is a discrepancy, try to figure out how to account for that, but then also publicly, just have a set standard that the other things may influence, but ultimately is your adopted standard. Just a suggestion.
Okay. Yeah, and I think I'm a fan of the idea of having some sort of question that allows a county to not necessarily dispute, but to explain any extenuating circumstances about the data that might be there. And I don't want to put words in Sheriff Glover's mouth, and I don't think he's actually said this, but I've heard it from Kane County in that, when they had the fire on the North Rim last year, you had a 1-year tank in tourism because everything got canceled, right? And the weather was bad and smoke and all this other stuff. Well, just because we're looking at last year's data set, giving the county a chance to explain that, hey, we had this weird situation this year. That's why tourism dropped. That's why our tax revenue dropped. That's why we might need more this year, because we don't expect tourism to stay down when they reopen the North Rim, right? And so maybe giving them an opportunity to explain extenuating circumstances, not necessarily dispute the data,
right,
but explain by why a 1-year glitch may appear.
Yeah, like a horrible snow year.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly.
So we didn't have the rescues in the backcountry during the winter.
Right.
We would have normally had.
But we still need to prepare for it. We still need to train for it. We still need, just because the number dropped by 20% doesn't mean it's any cheaper to run this outfit. Right?
Exactly.
So, okay. So I don't know. I'm kind of a fan of keeping that question, but maybe just having it worded to the point where counties get an opportunity to explain why the data coming from the State Tax Commission may not define all the need.
May not reflect, the average year or something.
Sure. Yeah.
To that.
Well, and I think actually more generally than that, there are sometimes cases where usually smaller counties have weird tourism stuff that KMC Gardner doesn't capture.
Sure.
And the Gardner Institute is very good at updating how they're capturing data to reflect that in the future, but just so that, those types of concerns don't make a county feel like they're being hurt here. I think that's very general question.
Such as like a one-time event, like the anniversary that Bryce Canyon had a few years ago.
Or like we had a balloon festival where attendance was 10x what it was last year. We're not really sure why. It must have hit Facebook, like that kind of stuff.
Eclipse is good.
Yes. Yeah. The eclipse was never captured in the Gardner Data Institute. Like that's type of stuff.
Yeah, that's always unfortunate. And I don't know about, not that these are in those rural counties, something like a Red Bull Rampage. You would hope that that's captured, but you just, I don't know.
Just kind of some general chance to say, we think that, or we want to know if this was included. whether
Okay.
it's to the up or to the down.
Can we just ask the question, that we're asking if they agree with the data from the previous year? Can we just ask, do you anticipate that those numbers to increase or decrease next year, and why?
I still don't think that quite captures that there are some counties who are going to think that the number from the Gardner Institute is wrong. And I think that in some instances, they probably have good reason to think that.
Just kidding. It's great. I also don't think that question necessarily captures like a Paiute County, or a Wayne County, like they have a 1-year change because of some event. Those costs were real, even though it may not bear out over a period of years. They did have a massive increase in bump if it was a UTV jamboree or something that came there one time or something like that. And so I don't also think they should be hurt because their averages are low. So yeah, I think just give the county an opportunity to explain why they're requesting maybe more than what it looks like, or why it's harder to provide the service there than others, or why the tax data doesn't bear out. Maybe they're a county where they're on the line and everybody just hops over to the nearest Walmart, which is 5 miles down the road. And so their tax revenue, they don't receive the tax revenue, even though everybody's recreating in their county, but they're buying their groceries somewhere else. So, that kind of stuff needs to be reflected.
Well, and to Shane, to your point, I think that like all of that is possible with the existing. Is this data accurate? Yes or no? And if not, please explain that is there. So if there's an interest in getting rid of that specific question on the phone, I don't think that helps or hurts what we're talking about.
So how does, thinking of Paiute County, they've got a fire going through
Right.
there. It's probably affecting the Paiute ATV trail,
100%.
but there's probably some rescues and so forth related to the wildfire as well. How does that, it might be lower visitor, but higher rescues in a year or two.
Yeah, I mean, typically those will be handled by fire resources, so it's not
Okay.
necessarily a huge impact on the county itself. But certainly it's going to affect their tax revenue and their income and their visitor population. And again, that North Rim fire, I mean, the impact of that will be felt for years to come from losing those visitors. And so I think just allow the counties to explain why.
Yeah, and poor Beaver County with the
Oh,
Eagle
yeah.
Point Resort lost.
As far as I learned to ski as a kid, it was never any good. It's not a reflection on Beaver. Go ahead, Jorge.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna reshare my screen real quickly because I guess kind of pointing to this question and looking at, I guess, the overall 5-year average that we're trying to capture. I'm gonna share my screen to kind of adjust and kind of show where we were pulling that, because this may change the overall discussion and what that question kind of looks like. Because again, I was trying to do more visitor related and seeing just overall estimates of it. And so with the financials, it may just be simple as just taking a look at the overall costs. Because for instance, this is where that question kind of essentially came from, which is determining the need of eligible counties. Again, this is more like the division shall annually determine the relative needs of eligible counties for financial assistance to support visitor-related emergency costs in eligible counties. So we can adjust it to be more cost-based rather than visitation-based, if that's helpful. And Patrick just put it into the chat there as well. So that could change what that question really looks like. Just wanted to make sure that brought that up to show where that kind of came from. So
Okay, let me quickly recap here real quick. So we've decided we need to adjust make sure that we have the word visitor related in those. Thanks, Shane, for catching that. We've worked on and we're okay with that definition as we see, which jives with the Utah tourism, I believe. Was that the discussion? Okay. And then now we're kind of trying to figure out if that question on page 4 needs to be there or if it just needs to have some rewording. And Jorge, your suggestion might be to reword it so that it's more about the cost and not necessarily the dollars visitors brought in, but the cost of providing the service, and that aligns maybe with the statute. Is that kind of what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see any issue with that. Again, I think as Patrick explained, there's only what 15 or so eligible counties. So the reviewing this it's not like we're going through 100 applications. So I think we'll have time to look at specific instances and make sure that, you know, we're comfortable and that those who might have extenuating circumstances, that those things get considered.
I think as Jorge and I, work together on this, there is a kind of a priority thing, like prioritize counties with lower populations and higher. And, I think this is one that we pulled from the bill, but I don't think we quite captured it correctly on the application as we're kind of actively reviewing it. And so, yeah, and I think, what we are trying to get is that rolling 5-year average of visitor-related emergency costs, not visitation. And so if I can ask, to the group, is that data available on your end, from the individuals like working in the counties on this?
It will be in about 5 years if this is a requirement.
Okay.
And that was part of the, right, that was part of the goal, is that eventually this grant turns into a direct distribution. And that's part of the goal, is to have, a good set of information that's tracked over time, so that when you're doing your distribution, you don't have a situation where Paiute County's distribution is adjusted after a bad fire year, and it's instead captured more wholesale.
And I guess maybe, a question as we look at this, is this something that even needs to be on the application, right? Because it's the division, we're determining this here in the Division of Outdoor Recreation. Is this something that we are going to start determining through this program as we're getting this data? We could use 1 year, roll it over 5, then we have 2 years, roll it into 2, and et cetera. We could just pull this.
Well, and I think to go back, answer a little bit of that question is I think some of the data is super easy to capture. And then some of it's a little bit more nuanced. And as we dig into it, as the counties dig into it when they're doing their applications and costs, you're going to get better data in year 2 and better data in year 3 and better data in year 4. And so, I think if that question were to more accurately reflect their overall cost to provide these services, I think that's a better measure than just the cost that tourists brought to the community. Tax revenue doesn't tell the whole story.
Would maybe an alternative be, because we can't, depend that every county has that 5-year rolling average.
Sure.
Maybe we could say, would you estimate costs this year were an average year, kind of try to get a little qualitative, but we're getting the data over 5 years. We will have the actual data.
Yeah.
But then just kind of ask them to was this a normal year? Was this a high year? Was this a low year? Just to give us some idea as we're kind of looking at this, because I don't think this necessarily has to be on the application. This is not necessarily part of the measurement that you all will be making as you're trying to distribute some of these funds. But this is data that we'll need to report. So maybe it's just selfish for us to have this on the application. No, just kidding.
I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts. I think you could keep it or lose it, and I think counties have the opportunity in their sections to explain why their costs are what they are. I think the only benefit to having a question in there about, hey, is this an average year, or did you have any extenuating circumstances, or did you have whatever? I think that just is going to help with trying to forecast averages over time for the division as it kind of switches over to more of a direct distribution. So. Okay. We ready to move forward in some direction of a kind or another?
I just double checking that I'm understanding correctly. So we're still just overall looking to kind of just more remove this question then, correct?
Fine, if that's,
Yeah, I think we can remove it. We can reword it. So we're kind of asking them to describe it, or we simply ask them, is this year typical? Is this average? Wordsmith that, in other words. Like that, I think.
Any other thoughts from the board on that?
I'm just going to ask a real quick question. This is Kerry Cook. Is this just another redundant question from the previous information that's already been given in the application?
I mean, I guess it could potentially could be.
Okay. We don't need to be redundant. We have
Okay.
enough time taken up by other stuff too that we don't have to re-answer and reword and come at it from another question or another angle. We're meant to be supportive of the counties, not to pick them apart.
Okay, perfect. We'll remove that question then. Is there any other thoughts, opinions on it? And if not, I can move on.
Well, I think the only other thought is, we've talked about this becoming more automated over time. What metrics will be most weighted in the future? And we don't need to answer that today, but that's maybe what we should be focused on. It seems like even though a county may have high visitation and high TRT, that their need for search and rescue and emergency services is lower because they don't have outdoor recreation facilities as much. So, I mean, anyway, just a thought as we go forward. I agree with Commissioner Cook that we do this in a way that eliminates redundancy and makes it to where we're able to look at a very easy metric making decisions going forward.
Perfect. And then that's what we're aiming to do. Like I said, it's kind of why we adjusted the application the way we did. So we can do that and scratch this question here and work on it on our back end for whatever dollar amounts that we get. And like I said, try and pull that for it in the future. Okay. If there's nothing else on this, it was a good discussion. I can keep on moving forward. I left off on search and rescue here. I guess before I move away from search and rescue, I do kind of want to ask Sheriff Glover real quickly if he overall had to kind of task somebody to fill out this information, or if you're looking at this and you're the only one that has to fill this out, is this too much, or is this a good amount of make it easier on the counties for search and rescue?
No, I think it's doable, Jorge. I think this is a reasonable amount of questions. What I'm unsure of, and I don't know that we'll know until we review the first round of applications, is, and I think we need to be willing to make adjustments after we go through this exercise one full time. But up until then, I'm not sure that everyone will answer all the questions the same. And so I think that's going to be the goal of the board, is to try to get some consistency so that our job's a little easier, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried that we're going to get kind of a shotgun, batch of answers, and they're not going to be easily comparable. So, but I don't know how you fix that until we kind of see how those come in, and then we could adjust and overcome. So.
Perfect. Thank you. No, and then that makes sense. And for sure, we're always willing to adapt. The way that, I think the division overall is kind of viewing this is that, and just kind of all grant applications and grants themselves, it's a living, breathing, changing thing, constantly adapting. So thank you, and good to know. And so I'll be moving on to EMS here for this EMS portion. It's structured the same way as search and rescue, and the questions pretty much line up exactly the same way. We just kind of updated it to be more EMS, looking for that EMS perspective. These three questions, the same thing: visitor-related incidences within the year, reimbursement amount that's being requested for unpaid EMS, summarizing the unpaid EMS incidences included in the request and explaining how they're connected to increased outdoor recreation. And this is going to be one of those, for instance, what Shane kind of mentioned before, of just updating that to be more visitor related outdoor recreation, tourism, and so on and so forth. So we can wordsmith those. EMS present and ongoing amount requested, and then the proposed present and ongoing amount EMS costs, just overall summarization, explaining how they're related to visitor-related increased outdoor recreation, tourism, why EMS funding is potentially insufficient, explaining how the funds are going to be supporting EMS when it comes to increased outdoor recreation, tourism. Again, I'll adjust those questions, and whether any of the costs in the applications have been paid or already reimbursed, or reimbursed through any other non-county funding source. And then the ledger, and like I said, I'll be going through the ledger here shortly, just to kind of give you an idea of what that's going to look like. And then just the upload for all of the documentation that may be potentially included. And I guess kind of to start off here, I'd probably like to ask Andy the exact same thing, more along the lines of if this feels doable for the EMS folks.
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer is the same as Sheriff Glover, in that we just have to be willing to work with what we get and help provide some guidance in the future to make sure we're getting similar information from each of them. And that's the other thing that I asked you to put on the agenda, is just kind of, we'll talk about that later, but I would hope by probably after this first round, we could put some guidance documents together for these agencies. Rural EMS providers and directors are extremely fickle beings, and they need somebody to explain to them exactly how to fill stuff out. And so they just really want some definition. They don't like making things up. And so they really want some definition of what's being asked. And right now I'm trying to fill that role as much as I can. I know Jorge's met with a couple of them. And so I just think this first time around, it's just going to be, we get what we get and we'll figure it out. And then next time we can have some sort of working group meeting and give some more definition and some more guidance. So, but it's not too much at all. It's I think it's plenty of questions and it captures what's needed.
Okay, perfect. Any other thoughts, concerns before we move on to the next one? Okay, perfect. So this goes into the emergency road repair and upgrades section. This one's structured a tiny bit different, not too much, but it's more along the lines, again, like the total amount that's being requested for road repair and upgrades for your visitor related emergency costs. I've been wanting to identify what roads, where this is at. So this is kind of more taking and pulling like the long from like the top portion of the application, and so they're able to put that in here. And we added some additional help text to hopefully guide that. And then describing what the current road condition looks like and explaining how that's directly having an impact on search and rescue and EMS responses. Describing whether the proposed repair and upgrades, and describing the overall proposed repair and upgrades, and explaining how those improvements are going to help with emergency responses, access, response time, responder safety, etc. And again, I can adjust these questions if that's needing to update that more for, again, just more visitor related diction in there. And then explaining how current road conditions is connected to increased outdoor recreation. So in this case, that's going to be where I'll update that there. Whether it's a one-time improvement or an ongoing maintenance. And then including a detailed cost estimate of the overall proposed road repair and upgrade. So instead of budgets, we thought that it would be easier just to kind of get the overall cost estimate from the county, whether that's kind of from like the engineers or just whatever they have at the county to kind of provide that overall cost estimate, and then the supporting documentation that supports the overall cost estimate. And so that's the emergency road repair and upgrades here.
So
Any thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to just shoot me down if I'm reading too much into this. I think you can get rid of every word, everything that says proposed. Proposed road improvements are covered under the secondary road application, which is the visitor related safety costs, not emergency costs. the counties are already going to have done these repairs. And that was the purpose, right? Of the first cost was, hey, you know, a road washes out and we have to get there. The county's going to come in and lay gravel and grade the road, and they're already going to know their cost. Proposed road improvements should be covered under the secondary category. Unless I'm reading the bill wrong. That's kind of how it read to me. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but.
No, I think that's a really fair and good point there.
I'm just thinking in reality, we have, and I'm sure all the rural counties do, we have areas that wash out every year. And, you know, Onion Creek and some of our other roads where there's also a large recreation population in that area. And so, you know, the county has to go in and fix these roads, you know, so that we can access them for emergency reasons. They pay for that. It's already done. And so these aren't proposed fixes. These are done fixes that have a real cost, that it's a reimbursement.
Just adding some language, because I think it's a really good question. As I read it, as I'm reading the bill language, I still feel like the bill language is suggesting they haven't been done yet.
Interesting.
So I just put the bill language because we have the top one, which is documented expenditures, but it's conducting search and rescue. And then we have visitor-related emergency costs may include road repair, upgrade, as long as the county applying for grant presents sufficient evidence to suggest that the condition of the roads in the eligible county has a direct impact. That was just my eating a bit.
So what would be a road repair safety cost then? I guess that's where I'm mixing.
Is that like the
definition?
potholes and the rough stuff that make it?
Yeah, I think the safety would be used by a visitor as they're accessing an outdoor recreation site. An emergency would be search and rescue organizers accessing. So I think there's going to be it could be the same road, a lot of overlap. Yeah.
One of them is a serious problem for responders. The other one is more of a problem as far as public accessing recreation.
So like a particularly bad road that might need guardrails, that might be considered a safety related road repair,
For example.
whereas access might be considered an emergency. Would that be kind of okay? I can get along with that definition for sure.
That's just my reading of it.
I think
Not
that's
like in Emory County, like those two things sometimes overlap.
100%. Yeah.
They're likely to overlap almost every time.
Almost every time, I'd imagine. Yeah.
But it's how much of a urgent situation, emergency can you articulate versus
Yeah.
a safety issue? This is a safety concern. It does present some safety concerns as far as travel for our visitors. This one creates a huge problem because our responders can't even get to the people that might be in trouble.
Yeah. So in that way, some of the road stuff is not reimbursement. And that is kind of a little bit of an actual grant program in that way, not a direct reimbursement. Okay.
And then the prioritization model that it kind of lays out is the reimburse first and then look at ongoing emergency, then slowly work it down. This I think could be in the second tier.
Okay. Sheriff Glover, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I was just going to give a quick example. So most of you have probably heard of the Wave. It's a destination here. It's about 12 miles of gravel road to get to the parking lot, and then about a 3-mile hike. We have about, this time of year, we have a search and rescue event there almost every day, maybe 3-4 times a week at least. And we have to get an ambulance down that 12-mile stretch of gravel road to that Wave parking lot. It's probably the #1 destination, bucket list destination in my county. And it creates a problem on a number of these different levels of definition because getting an ambulance there is critical to people's safety. And it's difficult to maintain that road. So I think this does play together with search and rescue, not just, travel on roads, but actual response to search and rescue and EMS incidents.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can totally see it. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay, sorry, Jorge, continue.
No, let me share the screen again here. Okay. It wasn't popping up there for a second. Okay. And so any other questions or thoughts on emergency road repair before we move forward?
Can I ask maybe one question before we get into the road repair too much more is I don't see anywhere any language in the bill that talks about when we start accepting reimbursements, like how far back the costs go. It just says any unpaid, which gives us a lot of flexibility. Can maybe we just have the board kind of discuss how we want to define any unpaid?
Do we expect this first pot of funding to be higher? Because didn't it start getting collected over? Yeah, so
It will be, but I think that's a good question, but I think it'll happen in the board meeting.
Okay.
Part of the process, right?
That's a good thought. Yeah, when we can see.
yeah,
You can decide at that time, well, gosh, a lot of them go very far back and some very recent ones. And maybe someone from far back has better merit, a better case. I think it'd be better to leave it flexible for now.
Yeah, I mean, is there any guidance we should try to give? Whether it is like give us all or
Yeah.
look at the past five.
that's a good question. I don't know. I would assume going forward.
I think
it
it
would-
would level the playing field because some people are gonna see this and go, shoot, let's go all the way back. to
Yeah.
24.
Yeah,
Others
sure,
might be more
sure.
reasonable. Yeah, I think that is a good idea.
Because I think the assumption would be the last fiscal year, you know.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts, Katie, on what the counties were kind of expecting on the first round? I mean, I would say at least a couple of years.
Yeah.
On the first
Yeah.
round.
Maybe we just pick when collection started
Mhm.
as the
Yeah.
kind of fairground.
That seems fair.
That way you're using
Pretty
taxpayer
reasonable.
dollars for taxpayer expenses.
Was that that was a 24 deal?
So it started collecting in 25, Selena? January 1, I think.
Selena and
Yeah.
Carly. How did they do that?
You've never done that
I've never
before.
done that.
That's funny.
This one,
Yeah, so this is being paid for out of statewide TRT, which that increase went into effect July 1 of 2025.
that sounds good.
And counties use calendar years, so
Right.
I think if you say July 1, 2025, you're still gonna get someone who
Yeah.
did it in their calendar year 2025, but yeah, I think close enough, maybe.
So I have a question here. How much money are we looking at for the source of this grant? Do we have an estimate of how much is available for this purpose?
It's about between 6 and 7 million annually projected, so we've got, a little more than a year, so that's probably about where we're at.
Yeah.
7 million maybe.
We got a number from Yan recently. I can pull that up.
Yeah, nothing's come out of it really, so it should be pretty accurate.
Are there other, I guess I should have asked this. I imagine that there are administrative costs that are allowed to come out of that grant, right? For you, okay. And that's got a number or a percentage attached or something?
I don't think it's a
You know?
percentage, we
Okay.
just charge it.
Okay,
to it.
you just-
Yeah. Or his time and
Yeah,
takes time,
sure.
primarily.
Yeah. I had a bad experience once, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, I think we're all aware, we don't wanna
That's why we're sitting in the DNR offices right now.
Well, this is DHHS, so.
But it's 2% that we can use for ad.
Okay, that's the max, yeah, that's enough, yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for that discussion.
Yeah, I think we stay with when the tax was collected. I think that's fair. And I mean, I guess also going along with Jason's comments, like, if they do submit something that's years ago, we could look at the merit and, depending on the funding allocation and
It will
everything.
be up to the board
Yeah.
to make that decision.
Okay, I'm just writing these down so that way I can communicate it and also just have it. So thanks. That's a really good discussion. I don't think I heard, India, you were looking that up, correct?
Yeah, I confused it with someone else. She provided it recently. I can get it from her, but I don't have it as readily accessible as I thought.
Okay, that's no problem. I think what Jason provided was pretty accurate there. So
Yeah, Jason's number was what we were estimating off of when we were looking at historical transient room tax collections across the state.
Sorry, my apologies. I didn't quite catch that number. Was it 4 million that you said?
6 to
About
7 million.
6 to 7. Okay.
6, 7. Sorry.
And that includes all
guess
the
we
funding sources.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions before I move on?
I think we're good.
Okay, so this next portion is again going to be more related to your visitor, visitor related safety.
Okay, just a second, Jorge.
Okay, that's what I was actually
The
looking for.
last tab in the grants
Okay.
spreadsheet. So fiscal year 26, 6.8 million.
Okay.
Fiscal year 27, probably projected 7.7.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Okay, so it's 6.8 is this time, projections go up after that, but
Okay, thank you.
You might find it right where we had.
sorry, go ahead.
No problem. This is where we again had the second section start, where it was more visitor related safety costs. Again, we broke that out into just being, your solid waste disposal, law enforcement, and then your safety road repair and upgrades. So starting here is going to be your solid waste disposal. Just overall amount that's being requested for solid waste disposal. Again, I think it was important to identify what locations, facilities, or what we're potentially looking at that's being impacted. Describing the county's current ability to manage describing how the county's current solid waste disposal operations are being overwhelmed by outdoor recreation, tourism, and conventions, and explaining how it's creating an unsafe or unsanitary conditions. Explaining how the request would overall mitigate the effects of increased outdoor recreation, tourism, and conventions, and overall improve the operations. And then just providing that cost estimate here for solid waste costs, and then uploading documentation for the overall cost estimate for solid waste disposal. Any
We're gonna have a
thoughts,
lot of
questions?
I was just gonna say, we're gonna have a lot of visitor related plugs into these questions, just to be clear.
Yes. Thanks, Patrick.
And I think maybe just to give a little more context on these, I mean, it's our expectation that most of this money is going to be taken through the reimbursement process. And so I think kind of to Commissioner Cook's point, when we're asking for documentation on this, we don't want to overburden them with like heavy engineered plans, like a perfect budget. We're really just looking for estimates right now. And then again, kind of back to our willingness to do really like a heavy administrative lift. If you like, hey, this looks good, we want to support this ongoing or this project specific, future funding, that's when we can connect with them. That's when we can access, a better budget that we can put into a contract. So you might see like estimates and, some documentation, but that's by design. We just want to make it as low impact as possible. Partly because the expectation, we don't know if we'll have the funding for this. And also we can just connect with them after the fact. So.
It is a real, I know some people may scoff at the solid waste. Solid waste costs are high, and I mean, I know in Grand County, I'm sure other tourism driven economies have that, but they can point to every graph and the tonnage just spikes, March through September. So it's pretty clear the impact that it has on, tourism has on that. So yeah, that was good. Go ahead, Jorge. Sorry.
Okay, awesome. Okay. That's awesome. Okay, this next section was for that law enforcement section. Again, it's going to be the overall total amount that's being requested for law enforcement, describing how law enforcement activities are being currently strained as a direct result of increased visitor activity, describing the types of visitor-related incidences or conditions that are creating a safety concern for recreators, visitors, residents, explaining how requested funds would reduce law enforcement strain and just overall mitigate visitor-related safety impacts, and then providing that cost estimate for the law enforcement costs included in the request, and then again, just any supporting documentation for the proposed law enforcement request.
Go ahead, Sheriff.
So my question on this, when I brought it up a couple times, is that in most of these rural counties, an initial response for search and rescue incidents happen by full-time law enforcement deputies. And so this part is going to be a little confusing, I think. Is it our intent that tracked search and rescue responses are reimbursable regardless of whether they're done by volunteers or by full-time staff? And that's separate and apart from now me claiming under the law enforcement section that, because I have Lake Powell, or because we have, 3,300 cabins and mostly owned by Las Vegas residents that come to our mountain, I have to have more deputies on the ground because of these visitors coming to my community. And is that separate from the search and rescue response?
My initial assumption was yes. I think if full-time deputies are responding to search and rescue incidents, that should be covered under the search and rescue versus the just having to have more law enforcement available because of the number of tourists, not necessarily SAR related, but DUIs or just management of, that many more homes. I think that's separate.
And that matches the intent of the sponsor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I just want to kind of clarify that, because the reality is if Angelina was here, she would tell you, but the search and rescue reimbursement program covers the volunteer response, but does not cover any law enforcement response to search and rescue. And that's really, I think, the sweet spot of this grant for search and rescue, is to cover the county costs related, the unreimbursable county costs related to search and rescue. They're often full-time law enforcement responses, but they are search and rescue incidents. So I think that might come up in the process of us reviewing data, is what is a search and rescue response by a law enforcement officer? What qualifies as a search and rescue response versus, like, for example, if a visitor is at a trailhead and they lock their keys in their car, is that a search and rescue response, or is that a law enforcement response? So we may end up in the weeds a little bit on which side of the house this law enforcement / search and rescue list goes on. But I just want to throw that out, because that's kind of an issue that's probably going to come up. But I think you're right. I think search and rescue incidents need to be reimbursable in that other tier.
And I think one thing I'd add, and thank you, Sheriff Glover, these would be the safety costs, but if you have, an officer doing a search and rescue, absolutely. And we are going to get a lot, again, going back to any unpaid, that's a wide net. So I'm hoping this year we get a lot, and it's a lot of work to actually get through and define. But I think going into next year, our ability to communicate what we're actually looking at, I think it's going to be a lot stronger. So
I think there's a question there of, in the case you brought up, almost always that's not going to involve a life safety situation, right? So that's probably the filter, is any activities that take place that involve life safety. That's more of a citizen assist. That one's pretty clear, but there's probably other gray areas that I think you might probably be able to come up with. At least that's the primary filter.
Awesome.
One
Okay.
other question. Can I just throw one other question out quickly? It's not really along those lines, but as we've worked through different search and rescue grants, federal government and otherwise, there's always a question as to whether body recoveries count as a search and rescue cost. And pretty much across the board, it's been defined that they do. A lot of expense related to search and rescue comes with body recoveries, or underwater body recoveries, things like that. Any thoughts on that?
I don't think we want to disincentivize body recovery by making it not eligible.
Yeah.
Pretty clear.
Yeah.
Well, and to me, I guess, like, from just overall hearing just how things end up going with, those, it starts as a search and rescue, and then it turns into a recovery, right? So you still have search and rescuers out there looking for folks. So I think that would be fair, but any other thoughts?
No, I think absolutely it's reimbursable. It's a huge cost to the counties. It's necessary for closure for the case, closure for the families. I have no qualms about that being part of the reimbursement.
Fully agree.
Okay, any other questions on this law enforcement part, or good to head on?
I think you're good to move forward.
Perfect. This is I think this is the last section to this. Yes. Is the safety related road repair and upgrades. Again, this is more just overall on the visitor side and trying to make it safer for folks. The total amount that's being requested from road repair that's related to visitor related safety costs. And I wish I could show this. I've been working on the help text again, just continually to define visitor related safety costs and just making sure that that's repeated over and over again, just so that way folks are able to hopefully understand what we're asking here. But again, identifying the roads and the locations of the overall proposed repair and upgrades, and describing county's road conditions and how they're being overwhelmed by outdoor recreation and tourism, and conventions, and explaining how it's creating an unsafe conditions for visitors. And then describing the proposed use of funds for road repair and upgrades. And then providing a cost estimate for the safety related road repair. And then the supporting documentation for that. Yeah. Any questions on this?
Well, I think roads is the thing I have like the least amount of experience with on all of these fronts, but I did go sit down with our road supervisor and one of our county administrators and just kind of ask them. That's one of the reasons I brought that up, is because they were talking about some of the repairs they had done. And so I think the road guys are really good at explaining their needs and really good about getting estimated costs. At least that's kind of how they explained it to me. So I don't think they'll have any issue with the grant application or its questions. So.
Okay. Awesome. Anything else on these?
Should have said guys and girls. I named road women too. Sorry.
I just want to say this has been so helpful. Just thank you all.
Yes.
It was so helpful.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo that. It's been really helpful to have all questions answered here. So I'll be making these updates, and I can share them out with everybody just to get a final look before the application launches July 15th. So
This is Carrie. I just have one question again. We've got several different categories. Several are relating to roads. What's your percentages on what you're figuring to award this money out and by category? Roads are expensive. It can eat up a lot of money in just a little while, with especially emergency repair stuff.
So that's a really, really good question, Commissioner Cook. I do want to point out the bill has an overall prioritization matrix that kind of layers out what the overall priorities are of the grant.
Okay,
essentially,
good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other
I
questions?
don't think that,
I need to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
yeah, I don't, it definitely, it has prioritization in it. And I think that roads are expensive. I think that's probably the thing that will receive the least percentage of the cost reimbursement, if that makes sense. As far as, you might apply for a $2 million road and we may only be able to put 10% in or something like that. Whereas, they're really, from my understanding, counties are really looking to use the TRT revenue to cover the actual cost of the personnel and the things dealing with search and rescue and law enforcement as kind of the priority. EMS is the priority versus the roads. But, we just may not be able to put as much into that pot. But it's a real need. So
I think my reading, I just put the prioritization language from the bill. I mean, my read is that no money will go to roads until every emergency is funded, until there's a remainder and all of those needs are taken. That's when we can start looking at roads. So there's a good possibility roads don't even fund it a penny. But that's just my take. I mean, I would love to have an attorney look at that
And Commissioner, one of the reasons for that is that this pot of money will be much smaller than the needs that are submitted. And eventually, the goal is that this is just a direct distribution so that you decide as a county what of those, the categories of usage are not going to change, but eventually you'll be able to decide as a county where you want to shuffle money. So if you think about you doing that now, that's what this will look like. So maybe getting more rescue cover gives you more flexibility for you to spend other things on roads or vice versa, but this is
Future use.
Yeah, it's all allowable under TRT now, and that was the big change that you got.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Jorge, or anyone on the application?
That's all I have on my end for the application.
So helpful. Okay. Okay, we'll move on. And actually, we've talked about most of this. I talked with Jorge several weeks ago, and I'm sure that many of you have probably felt I've been fielding questions about the grant, about what exactly is included, what isn't. I've been trying to calm as many people down as I can. But we all thrive on adrenaline, so they love to make a big deal out of it. And so what I had done is I had prepped some information about what an EMS agency, what they submit, what that might look like. And I, unfortunately, in that process, our finance lady decided to go to Africa to take pictures of lions. And I have now deployed 3 ambulances to fires. And I have not finished that document. But my plan was to have that prepared and ready so you guys can kind of look at it and say, yeah, that looks like about the line. And my plan was to submit that to the Rural EMS Directors Association as like, hey, if you guys follow this, you'll be closer in line with what everybody's submitting. Not as official guidance, but just kind of as Andy's thought process. I don't know how that fits into the realm, or maybe if we do want to adopt this formal guidance on how they submit that. There's a ton of questions. I know Sheriff Glover brought some up first about ambulance billing. Many of these calls do get a reimbursement, but it's less than 50% of the calls get a reimbursement. So like, how do you factor that all in, actual cost versus billing costs versus? And so I was trying to provide some guidance, and in that way, EMS is a little bit more complicated when we're submitting actual costs because we usually track it with billing numbers, which we know we only receive 46%, 48% of what we bill. So that'll be a little bit more complicated, I think, on the EMS end, but that is something I'll just try to get out to you guys, and we can talk about after we receive all the applications too. It might help me narrow down what I need to put on there. So that's the only thing I wanted to bring up. Okay. Other business, grant webpage and cost ledger.
Yeah, and I can share my screen here. And I kind of want to go over the cost ledger first, just simply because we were discussing the application. So let me pull that up just so that way you guys are able to see it. Just an overall idea if there's any other thoughts of what we might be missing, but I think this is pretty basic and kind of simple to what we're kind of needing. Again, trying to make it as easy as possible in the counties to fill out that information. I'm just double checking if folks can see my screen again.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I don't know if you could zoom in, that would be helpful for me.
Yes, let me.
Before this year. So.
Oh, me too.
Need glasses.
Hopefully that's better. Is that better?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So this is what SAR and EMS is essentially going to be using for the grant when they're submitting their expenses that they're wanting to get reimbursed. Essentially, we'd just be asking again the organization with the county, the overall detailed expense summary of what they're looking to get reimbursed for when it comes to search and rescue, EMS. We put vendor on there, but it is kind of tricky in the sense of, it's not necessarily like a, not necessarily, you might have a vendor, you might not, but we had put that in there anyway. And then just overall a reference to the documentation that was provided and then the date and the amount. And folks can go into this, and it'll be on the webpage where they could add line items if they need to, if it exceeds more than 12. But it's just pretty simple, pretty quick. Just wanted to make sure that you guys are able to take a look at it and see that as well. Especially since we're kind of going away a little bit from typical budgets. Again, that's more going to be on the administrative side. We'll be providing that administrative lift to help out, and so you guys can see that a little bit better. But just thought I'd share this with you, especially since, for instance, we have two SAR and EMS folks.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would maybe consider putting in parentheses or something under vendor is like, you know, maybe what fund did that come from, right? If the county is looking to reimburse HR expenses, that came from the county general fund, right? Or how did they pay for that? Did that come from a special service district fund, right? Where did that money come from? That way, the word vendor just might confuse a lot of counties when they're looking at a reimbursement. So.
Okay, got that.
I think we're trying to be as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's so helpful that, you know, where did it come from? How was it paid? Where does it come?
Any other?
No, we should.
Any other questions on that? Are we good? Take a look at the webpage here.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Cool. Okay, let me pull that up as well. Takes a minute to go back and forth from sharing screens. Okay, and this still has some information that I'm working to update. This is just an quick glance and look at what it's going to be looking like. We have an option for, again, showing where people can sign up for our grant portal, viewing the program guide, and that's still in the works. It's really close, and so I'll have that out and send that out before July 15th for folks to take a look at and use to help fill out the grant application and kind of our intention and how to fill that out, especially with, you know, that it's a one grant application, one county, but we might have, you know, at the very least, maybe 3 folks filling it out, potentially more. I think it's going to be a huge lift on the counties here for that. So still in the works. It's almost done. So appreciate the patience. I just go through this real quick, just when that's going to be opening and when it closes, the awarded amount, again, one application and where the funding comes from, who can essentially apply, and then essentially just it's aimed the way that the grant is aiming to help the counties. And then we have like the costs that are eligible for it. So we got, again, your visitor related emergency costs, your safety costs, and then how to submit that grant application through the portal. Anything that should be known before they're applying. And like I said, this is still being updated. So for instance, like the budget requirements, that's going to be updated language from budgets, since we decided to stray away from that. And then just overall review process and the post award requirements. And then our forms that we're going to have on there for it. But that's essentially it. It's just a quick run through. Just wanted to show you that we're been working on it. I know we've been getting a lot of questions on it, and so just really appreciate everybody's patience with it. So yeah, if there's any other thoughts or questions on that, please feel free.
I think we're good there.
I think my one big thought is, because, you know, the bill's called outdoor recreation, like mitigation. I always just want to include the word impact, because we don't want to mitigate outdoor rec. We want to mitigate the impacts of recreation.
Yeah,
so maybe we slide that in.
I think that's totally fair.
I'm sorry.
Well, we Gary, Yeah, I understand that, right? It may sound like it's counterintuitive to the division's goals of allowing outdoor rec and providing for great opportunities for people to come visit Utah. But, yeah. Okay. Is there any other, I mean, it says we have public comment. Anybody have any public comment? Apparently your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Okay. Is there anything else that we need to kind of talk about? I don't know, Jorge, I'm happy to bring up the issue that got brought up with you and has been brought up with me a few times about districts, and does the money have to go to districts if it's being applied for under a district? And I don't think there's any, I don't know that there's any guidance or anything on that, but I know districts will be very hesitant to provide data if the money does not reach them. So I know that got brought up with Jorge a little bit with SAR, and that's a little different as in they're under the county. But it's less than 50% of EMS in these counties are provided by county services, usually a district, or and in some cases it's a nonprofit or something, but they're not eligible, so they wouldn't be able to reimburse. But that got brought up with me as a concern. I just wanted to bring that to the group, and then also I know it got brought up with Jorge as far as SAR folks were concerned. They had some concern about whether they would actually receive the funds that are coming in. Again, counties kind of have a lot of latitude, which is good in a lot of respects. So,
I think we've talked about it before. It feels like more or less a pass through from the county to the district.
yeah, I think if you're going to apply under a district name, the implication is that that money goes to that district, right? If you're including their cost.
So that's clearly the law.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Most of those are the reimbursement cost.
Right, which yeah, I mean, one of the issues that we're facing is those reimbursement costs come from the district's fund. And so if that reimbursement cost goes back to the county, the district is still out the money. It doesn't end up, so, but obviously the county acts as a through, and I don't believe any county wouldn't give that money back to the folks as it's being applied for. I just know that's come up as a concern with several districts who've talked to me. So
The language of the contract potentially.
yeah, and that is the EMS grants are that way too. There's a lot of language about we will do this with the money, et cetera, et cetera. But go ahead, Sheriff.
Just to make sure I understand, so like, just to use myself as an example, so the Kane County Hospital District is a district and they run our ambulance service. So the county would be collecting this reimbursement for EMS and then submitting it to the hospital district for reimbursement essentially. So I'm understanding that's allowed under the grant or under the program, I should say.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you mentioned something about search and rescue, or somebody had reached out saying they were concerned that the funding may not find its way back down to search and rescue. I can see that being a concern. Is there anything in the law that requires, that somehow restricts the funds that we distribute to make sure that they are in fact put in the right places?
I did my own research as a very much non-lawyer, and I didn't see anything in the bill that was passed that required the money go directly to that, especially, and in a county situation where those funds have already been spent out of county money, it would be much harder to say, well, that money has to directly go to search and rescue. But that was the concern that was brought up at the Fish Lake conference. I think Jorge received a few concerns about that. I haven't heard anything personally. I just know Jorge had received some. So.
Yeah, no, that was a question that I had gotten when I presented this grant to the search and rescue folks. It was essentially just more along the lines if it's funding that the counties are actually going to be, or the search and rescue is actually going to be essentially seeing, and that rather than it going to just kind of general fund. But I mean, that was just the overall questions that I kind of received, and it was a definitely difficult question to answer, because I mean, I'm not necessarily 100% sure, you know, what that looks like, and I don't know. It's, yeah, like I said, that was a hard question to answer. So
Could we try
It
to
would be
capture?
tough. This is Kerry again. You got me in the commissioner seat, so you got me asking questions and thinking hard. From a commissioner standpoint, I would have loved to have been invited to your presentation to the search and rescue guys. You know, a lot of stuff happens and commissioners don't get invited to it, and we're the ones that catch all the slack. So we'd love to support it. And we can't support stuff if we're not invited and aware of what the heck's going on.
I'll have to mention that to Sheriff Glover. He as the president of the Utah Sheriff's Association.
Well, we have some other issues in the county with sheriffs too, so at the moment, but hope the elections are going to fix some things, and part of it's I won't be here. So that's just the way it is. People can't help you if they're not invited, and I don't care what position you're in, but if they affect them and they have a decision that can help, they don't do any good not being invited.
Yeah, no, I think the answer to that question is the reality is that as far as the EMS and law enforcement and search and rescue are concerned, this is a reimbursement, meaning somebody's already paid that, and it's probably the county, right? In most cases, other than maybe in the EMS case, but in most cases, the county has already paid that bill. And so the money is going back to the county because they've already covered the cost. And that makes complete sense. And so it's much harder for me to answer that question in regard to search and rescue, because that is a county function and the sheriff office function, which is funded through the counties. And so, you know, it's just, again, I don't think it's anything that we need to do anything about. I think it's more about just being aware of what maybe some of the concerns are, and being able to kind of have those discussions. Again, I'm looking at Katie. I'm sure you has some thoughts.
I mean, if you're suggesting that a county would request a reimbursement that they did not pay for and then not return the money where the reimbursement came from, that is like dishonest, is what you're suggesting.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I think what I'm saying is that the concern floating around out there is that there's a lot of grants that come in, and sometimes they get swapped up in a general fund, and people don't understand this. This is different. That's why I'm saying that's how it needs to be explained to people. It's under a reimbursement program. Yeah.
Well,
you know, particularly, go ahead, Sheriff.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I think the confusion here is a little bit the difference between a grant and a reimbursement. I think a lot of people are a little, I don't know, maybe a little jaded or whatever as it regards to grants that you know, maybe some supplanting happens or whatever else, and you know, general fund money is used to do something, and then the grant funds come in and they don't go to the same place, and so there's maybe a little bit of mistrust across the state regarding actual grants. It's a little different, and I've had this question a couple times now, and I've explained that, you know, this is a reimbursement, so that it should be tracked. It shouldn't be an issue. The money's already spent. Obviously, you already got the money because you spent the money, and now it's being reimbursed. So I don't think it'll be as bad in this case. As far as Carrie, as far as inviting you to the search and rescue conference, you're always invited. It's just always there in your backyard. I didn't go this year either, so I wasn't there either, but it's a great conference. So you're welcome to come up to Fish Lake anytime. I think in this case, I think that it's a little unique with search and rescue as opposed to EMS, because EMS is now a core function of the county. Counties choose to farm it out to various different, you know, options for how they accomplish that, but it is a core function of the county or municipality now. Search and rescue is a core function of the sheriff statutorily, and so, but we have to work closely with commissioners because the commissioners have the fiduciary responsibility for the county, and so they have to you know, fund the budgets, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a good point that we have to work together, but we need to overcome that mistrust if it exists, because this program, people need to have confidence in this program, and I think that's a function of the board to some extent. So we'll have to watch this pretty close.
And I think the word grant gets misunderstood, right? So we call it a grant program, and that's how I've tried to explain that when Jorge and I had this discussion several weeks ago. It was, It was a matter of, this isn't why we're calling it a grant program, it's a reimbursement program.
For
So,
something,
yeah,
not for
Not for
everything.
everything, yeah, but like, for instance, the SAR and EMS costs, those have already been absorbed. Somebody paid for that, right? And so that money is really a reimbursement. SAR may not see a massive increase in their budget when they get awarded $300,000 because that money had already been spent and is now reimbursing whatever fund paid for SAR that year, right? Whether it was TRT money, whether it was general fund, whatever it might be. So we need to be careful about how we talk about it when those questions come up. It really is a reimbursement program for a lot of things. Yeah, there is. Absolutely.
Just a real quick clarification question. From my understanding, after they've applied, there will be this ongoing funding that they don't have to apply for. So in that case, I mean, don't we need to get documentation to say this is how the money was spent or something to that extent?
I don't think it transitions right away.
I know, but in the years to come, or do we not have to worry about that now, Patrick?
I would say the goal, we're looking at what, like 3 years or so, but it's still going to depend on them reporting, so it won't be they just kind of sit and a check shows up. They'll still need to report, but it'll be a lot through the auditor and the information they're providing. And I think as we're thinking about this too, I mean, I'm glad you're having these conversations. I'm glad we're hearing these concerns. And maybe there's an opportunity after we get this money out the door, as we are kind of looking to next year, you're going to be talking to other, EMS folks, so, Sheriff Curtis, maybe, we kind of understand how they're feeling about how the money's being distributed, but we could even try to maybe capture some of that as they're applying for the next year, and I don't know exactly what it looks like, but how was the money distributed or something along those lines. And, so we're going to learn this year. Yeah. But we do need to capture that next year. It's an obvious concern, or it becomes a concern. Yeah. We can capture it, bring it into just how we put the money out, how we track it. So.
And I'd like to mention that answering that question, I did answer it in the way of, that it is like a kind of hybrid of a program in the sense that it's reimbursement as well as there's some portion of it where it's going to be more of a grant program. I could add some language into the program guide as well as just anything else to kind of just be, fully transparent with the way that it's kind of working and point folks to, the right direction when they have questions like that. So.
Well, I really like Sheriff Glover's idea. I mean, this is an opportunity also to maybe build trust in areas that may not have been there in the past. And what I love about a reimbursement program is you're looking at actual data, you're looking at actual costs. And so it's very easy to track and very easy to say, yes, we spent this and we received this, and here's where it went, rather than grants, which do frequently supplant other funding, and kind of get moved around a little bit more sometimes. So,
and again, in this situation, this is TRT money,
Yeah.
so that's actually not possible. This wouldn't be general fund dollars.
it couldn't be, right? It
If
couldn't
it landed
supplant
in a
general
county
funding.
anyway.
That's exactly right.
Let's be careful when we're talking about commissioners doing the jobs that they were elected to do that we don't suggest they're doing.
I was not suggesting that. I was expressing a concern that I've heard,
Yeah.
and there are districts who are concerned about that.
And I think working on how we explain that makes a ton of sense. I
Yeah.
think that's a worthy goal to get to.
100%.
I think the qualifier is invalid concern.
And
There's a
Yes.
concern, but it's not valid. That's correct.
Yeah, still a concern. Still has to be addressed.
It is a perception. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, and just to be clear, most of our grants are set up as a reimbursement for funds.
Right, they're spending a
It's
portion
still
before they
both,
receive it.
Yeah.
But anyways, we don't need to debate how that works.
But yeah, just on
100%.
the little teeny side of it.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Any other questions, concerns, comments that folks have received, things we need to be aware of before we close this thing out?
I just want to say thanks to the board for putting in the work necessary to get where we are now, and to Jorge and Patrick and everybody else that's worked on the application. This is a complicated chunk of money to try and fit through all of the various holes that the law has put out, and I think we're in a good position. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. Your staff is amazing. So thanks, Patrick and Jorge. You guys have done awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do I need a motion to close, or do we just close? That always gets debated. I'll take a motion to close the meeting.
I will
Technically, you
make
don't have to have one, but if you want to do one, then go for it.
I knew somebody would speak up.
Technically. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.